I would like to introduce Julie B. Her sobriety date is October 28, 1999, from the Women's Club in Cottonwood, Arizona. Julie, passing the mic to you. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you so much. Hi, guys. I'm Julie, and I am an alcoholic. And I'm glad I dressed up for today. I'm sorry nobody can tell, but please tell my sponsor I was dressed very nicely. It's what I was taught. Um, my story, I mean, we all drank. That's how we got here. I won't go into that much, but I will tell you that I was positive there's no possible way on the face of this earth that I could be an alcoholic. I hated alcohol. The first drink I ever had, I do remember that, and I remember the feeling of that. I grew up just a regular family. My parents were non-alcoholic. They had parties every once in a while. And one night before a party, Dad sat me and my two brothers down and said, "Well, I'll give you a little taste of what we drink while you're upstairs watching TV." So he put some white cream de cocoa on a Sprite and let us drink that. And it tasted like a chocolate Sprite. You couldn't get those in cans or back in the old day, we would have to go to the local creameries to get like a chocolate Coke or cherry Coke. But that's what it tasted like. My brothers drank theirs, went upstairs, they're fine, and something different happened to me. I felt it like a ball of flame going down into my chest, out to the ends of my fingers, all the way down to the ends of my toes. And then my head got fuzzy, dizzy, and I looked for that feeling for 33 years and never got it again. And the reason I say I couldn't have been an alcoholic is because when I started drinking at 12, it was at like little makeout parties in junior high. So we'd all be Denver, Colorado is where I grew up, and peppermint schnapps was big because we're all skiers. So you'd drink a bunch of pink peppermint schnapps at these parties, and you'd go outside to get some air because it was kind of hot and stuffy in there. Beautiful snow as far as you could see. And in that snow are all these piles of pink peppermint schnapps puke, steaming, ruining the whole landscape. And I thought, this is gross. Why do people do this? This is sickening. And I stopped. However, there was something wrong with me. I knew something was wrong with me. I knew I was different. I had to do something. So for many years, I did anything else I could find that could change the way I feel. I thought I was adopted. I didn't feel like I fit in with my brothers. I wasn't like I came from my parents. Nothing wrong with being adopted, but I was sure that that's what was wrong with me. I didn't fit with the family. I didn't fit in any of the groups in school. In school, however, I got straight A's all the time because if I didn't, they'd look at me. They might look a little more closely, and somebody may be able to find out what's wrong with me. And I didn't really want to know. I went through all the school like that, got into college, got straight A's there too. So I'm still not feeling good. I'm still doing everything in the world I can find to change the way I feel. Nothing's working anymore. I called it partying. I would live to party. And at the end of my drinking, I had to drink to live. But until that time, I thought I'll become a school teacher. That's a respectable job. People won't look too close. And I got a degree in education, and there were no teaching jobs available in the mid 70s when I got out of college. So my first resentment, without knowing what it was against the Denver schools for not giving me a job, because don't you know what a great school teacher I would be, not sober ever. But I went ahead and I substituted for a couple years, and you have to lay off after 3 years for some kind of tenure rules. And during that time, I needed a job, so I applied with an airline, and I got on with a small Texas airline as a flight attendant. Not anything I ever really thought about, not something that I thought I wanted to do, but wow, is that a perfect job for a fledgling alcoholic? Fantastic. You don't have any real sense of community. You never work with the same people hardly more than a month at a time, so nobody can really get to know you. And I'm out flying all over the country at that time and just like I said, partying all the time. That's all we did. The time I was on the airplane, I wouldn't do anything because I wanted my job and I didn't want to get in trouble. But the minute I was off, that's what it was, straight for usually like 3 or 4 days off. You don't work real hard if you're a flight attendant. Sorry, you don't. You get twice as much money as the school teacher would have made. Um, with half as much work. But I continued that way on, and my small little Texas airline bought a major airline, Continental Airlines, and we became Continental. And it was, like I said, the best job in the world for an alcoholic. It was partying all the time, all of us, pilots and flight attendants alike. And then I think it was 1986 when the Northwest pilots got arrested for flying drunk. And I knew that was going to screw my life up. And sure enough, it did. Because now they were going to start to drug and alcohol test us even more than they did already with the random DOTs. So for me, what I had to do, as much as I didn't like throwing up, I had to change to alcohol because I knew there was no way I could work that other schedule around a testing schedule. And alcohol, the FAA said you had to have 8 hours between flights without a drink. And my company said 12 hours. So I figured, I can work this around there and they'll never be able to find me. Nobody will find me. I can keep partying forever. And that's what I did. I laughed at my friends who had to go to rehab because I'm like, look, I cured my problem. Can't you see? You can cure, just go to alcohol. You can cure any other kind of problem. But I made it through, had a great time. I will tell you, I didn't see anything. I flew now all over the world. And all I saw of all over the world was either bars or the hotel room. And it gets to where it's not fun anymore. Like I said, it was drinking to live, and then, I mean, living to drink, and then now it's starting to be drinking to live because I did that for a good long time in that job. And I didn't know what to do. I knew something was wrong with me. There's still something wrong. I still don't fit in. I'm not like everybody else, and I don't know what it is. But like I said, there's no way I could be an alcoholic, right? First of all, I don't like it. I'm drinking all the time, but I don't like it. And second of all, I didn't live under a bridge. I owned a home. I owned a car. I had the same job for 20 years. And so I was sure that there's no possible way that could be my problem. I just knew something was really wrong. And I tried to quit. I started trying to quit. And I don't know what y'all know what exactly what I mean. How that little alcohol, it's a liquid, it can't even hold itself up without being in a bottle. And that has control over me. And it is running my life. And the only time that, like I said, that I did not drink was while I was on the airplane. But now I was becoming pretty senior. So I could work 2 days every week and have 5 days off. So that was my schedule. During the time I'm off, from the minute I land and get to my car in the parking lot, I would start drinking. And I would drink and pass out, drink and pass out, drink and pass out for the 4 or 5 days that I had off. And I would stop 12 hours before I had to check in so that I wouldn't get fired, and I'd go to work. And this became drudgery that was normal for me, but it is so abnormal. It is not life. There is no life. I didn't do anything. I had friends that would try to get me out of the house, get me to go, I mean, not even parties anymore, nothing. And I just couldn't do it because I couldn't be away from drinking that long. And it got to where the shakes were so bad on the airplane. I mean, I'm serving coffee and drinks in the aisle of the plane, and I'm spilling half of it with my shakes over on the people. You burn them, you're in trouble. So I changed positions to where I had worked just in the galley, and all I had to do was cook the food and pass the food out, and I could hand a tray to somebody. But still, my shakes are severe on the time I'm on the airplane, and passengers are asking me what's wrong. Nobody ever guessed it, but they were like, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, I'm on a new allergy medication and it makes me really shaky. I don't like it either. And I just finished like, get me off of this flight. And the minute I get to the hotel room, I would need to start pounding drinks. I couldn't drink out of a glass because I couldn't hold one. So I used a sport bottle that you bite the top of it and then just shoot a bunch of scotch down. And I kind of got some of that warm feeling that I got that first time that I looked for, but it never came back. I never found that whole warm, all over, safe, comfortable feeling again, actually, until I got into AA. But I continued with trying to quit, going back to drinking, promising myself I could have passed a lie detector test like all of us could have, I'm sure. I am not going to drink today. The next thing I know, I'm drinking and continue that on and then stop so that I can go to work and come back home. And this was my life for years. I was not healthy because I wasn't eating. I was basically only consuming alcohol. And I was at my doctor one morning. It was about 11 in the morning. And she said, you know, Julie, you shouldn't be drunk. It's 11 in the morning. And I was just getting scared enough because I had tried to quit over and over and over, and I could not. So I listened to her, and she said, I'm going to send you to a detox center and I want you to get cleaned up and then we'll talk. Now it was Houston, Texas, so she let me drive there. I was drunk, but I drove over to the psych ward, which is what it was, this psych ward of our local hospital, and I checked myself in. And I thought, you know, this is like 5,000 bucks. This costs too much. So I got it put on my insurance. So now the airline knew what I was doing. If I wouldn't have been that drunk when I got there, I probably wouldn't have done that. Because when I get done with all this, they're going to know where I've been and they're going to start watching me. And first time, it was 32 years that I'd been drinking solid something every day. And this was the first time in 32 years that I had not ingested alcohol or anything else. And it felt pretty good. And I get ready to get out. It was only a 4-day thing, and I was already off 4 days, so nobody missed me at work. I didn't get in trouble. And the psychiatrist asked me how much I drank before he lets me go. I gave him every good alcoholic's answer, and I said 2. And I really didn't used to lie that much either because my story was, you know, he doesn't know what 2 I'm talking about. It's like 2 5-liter boxes of wine or 2 gallons of scotch. I don't know what I drank in a day anymore because there were no days. It was just a big blur. And I finished that thing, went back to work, started going, and I stayed sober 8 months because he didn't tell me I was an alcoholic. I know nobody can tell me that, but it might have been different if he would have said that. Because I thought, well, you know, I just have a problem with alcohol. I knew I had a problem with alcohol, but now I'm not drinking. So this is it, right? And what I didn't know is you can take the alcohol out of an alcoholic, but you're left with the ick. And that is what is still inside of me. And it's not being fixed. I've got no program whatsoever. I am just sober. And I lasted 8 months like that. And it was really easy to do. Now they had me on another kind of drug testing called no notice through the airline, where when you go into work, if your number comes up, you go test. And I was doing fine because I wasn't drinking. And I would look down at the panel where it's 000, and I'd go, as it should be, and I'd sign my paperwork and be off on my trip. But what happened at 8 months was I got bad news, you know, poor me. I had to have my hip replaced. I was only 44 years old. I thought that's kind of major. And I felt so sorry for myself. And I went to a restaurant to celebrate on the way home. And I'm thinking, which is always a problem, I'm thinking I'm going to be off for quite a few months with this surgery. I haven't had a drink in 8 months. It couldn't possibly hurt me to have a drink. And I ordered some food. I ordered wine. I'm very cheap. It cost $4.75 for this little teeny glass of Chardonnay. I slammed it, shoved the food aside, went right to the liquor store, and I was right back where I left off, if not worse. And I was back to the total drinking and passing out, drinking and passing out for every moment I wasn't on the airplane. And the only time I didn't drink again was while I was on the plane. Because you know what? I wanted that job. It's the only way that I knew how to live this horrible life that I was living. I made enough money to buy what I needed, and nobody ever really got to know me. So I think I was off work about 6 months, and I had given them those 8 months of those no notice testing, but I owed them a year of that. So when I finally got back to flying and got physically rehabbed, I owed them 4 more months of these drug alcohol tests. I'm like, okay, I can do this. You know, I mean, I think we all think we can work a drinking schedule around somebody's testing schedule, but you know it's not going to last forever. And I made it 4 months. The last trip of the last month, that was October 26th, 1999. I was checking in the morning at 10:30 and I stopped drinking 15 and a half hours before I had to go blow in that tube because I needed that job. I wanted this job. I wanted people off my back, just leave me alone and let me drink myself to death, is basically what it was. And sure enough, my number comes up. I get out to the clinic at the George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston, and I get ready to blow in the tube. Point oh four is termination. Point oh two, the DOT doesn't even let you drive. And I looked down on that panel and it said 0.042. And I knew nothing of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous because remember, I couldn't be an alcoholic. I never went to AA. But I will tell you that that first step took me right then, right there at that clinic at the airport. And I admitted I was powerless over alcohol and my life had become unmanageable. I didn't really even care about the job anymore. I was just scared and I thought I was dying. My supervisor met me. They pulled me off the trip. My employee assistance rep, the supervisor is not an alcoholic. She's not in recovery. She doesn't understand this. And she just looked at me with disgust and said, "What is wrong with you? You reek of alcohol." And my employee assistance guy, he opened his arms wide, gave me a big hug, big smile on his face. And he said, "Well, Julie, what's up?" And I said, for the first time in my life, "Somebody please help me." I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And sure enough, they were going to offer that help. They took me in an office, sat me down. They had me sign termination papers, just not date them. They were going to give me a year. Thank God Continental Airlines had a second chance policy because this was my second chance as far as they were concerned. And they were going to give me one more try. They're going to send me to a rehab, a really good one. Father Martin's Ashley up in the Chesapeake Bay. Said I had to spend 28 days there. And when I got back, I had to do an IOP through the airline with pilots and flight attendants, as well as go to AA and do all this, tons of rules. Anybody's ever been, you know, it's like you got to do this and that and that. And as bad as I wanted to quit drinking, that disease, this disease I have that wants me dead, came into my head within 10 minutes and said, "Oh, no, no, I can't go there. I have cats at home. I can't leave them." Now, I've been flying with animals for 20 years, right? It's not a problem. But my employee assistance guy said, "If you want this job, you're going to do this." And so I said, "Okay." Those cats hated me, by the way. I fell drunk all the time in the house. I broke every piece of furniture. I had glass and brass furniture, and I was breaking it all the time. I had the glass guy on speed dial because I had to call him so often. And the cats hid for a year and a half that I had them. They hid behind the TV. So they really probably were grateful that I was going to be gone for 28 days. And they fly me up there. They put me in first class. And because I am such a selfish, self-centered person, I'm sure that it's because they're watching me and that they have told the crew that I am going to rehab. So I wouldn't touch anything while I was sitting in the seat. I went in the bathroom, I drank everything that I had brought with me, took anything I could possibly find that I had had in my house because I thought, this is going to be kind of radical from here on out. It doesn't look like I get to do this anymore. And I got up to this place and they didn't know where to put me, what program to put me in because I had been through a detox. So thank God they put me in a relapse prevention program. So I learned how not to relapse before I even learned how to get and stay sober. And I think that was probably beneficial because I haven't had to try that yet. So I sat there with those people not understanding what they were talking about because they had already been to AA and they were talking about meetings and sponsors and steps and all this stuff. And I didn't really get it. But I knew that I was starting to feel kind of good and I was getting a little bit of hope until about 2.5 weeks, right before I was getting ready to leave. They have a speaker come in and he is that pilot from Northwest Airlines, the one who got me almost fired, right? It's his fault that I'm here. And there were a bunch of airline industry people at this facility, and we sat together in the back of the room and just glared at that man when he was sharing his story. And we just looked at him and we're saying, it's your fault. They never would have found us if you hadn't have gotten arrested. Well, by the time he's done sharing, we go up to him at the end and say, we didn't like you when you started, and now we realize that you're probably instrumental in helping us save our lives. And we want to thank you. And he said, I get that a lot. Um, Very interesting man. Luckily, he even has a story in the big book now, which is great. But I got out of the rehab, came to Houston, and got scared because now I'm on my own. What am I going to do? I'm not with these people that are telling me what to do every moment of every day. And they said, you need to go to AA because you've got to do the steps. And I am willing to do it. I will tell you, a lot of it was to keep the job until I started feeling better in the steps. And I always tell people, you can't stay sober for anybody except yourself. And at the beginning, I was staying sober for the job. I went to a meeting the first day I went home and called the AA group. And the minute I sat on my couch, and both of those cats who hated my guts, they both walked up on my lap and sat on me. And we were friends ever since then. I guess they knew I wasn't going to fall drunk anymore in the house. But I get up to the AA club, and the guy goes, there's a big book study at noon. I didn't know what that meant, but I had a big book. So my big book was $30,000. That's what my company paid for that rehab. And I think they're $8 in or something. But I go up there, and the gentleman who answered the phone had recently suffered a stroke and was not able to read. The other guy who was up there that day couldn't read. And I didn't know what a big book study was. But those two guys held a meeting for me because I was the newcomer there. And I will never forget them for that. And then one of them became a very good friend for years. And this club was called Champions, which is a pretty neat name for a bunch of people trying to save their lives. And it became my home group where I stayed consistently for 18 years. Um, I needed that sponsor though, because I knew work was watching me still. And I thought I better at least try this. I heard those things like, give it 90 days, we'll refund your misery if you don't feel better. Don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle. So then I thought it's worth a shot. All I had read up to this point in the big book was We Agnostics, though. That's all I would read because I got a real problem with this program because it talks about God all the time, and I am not going to believe in God. As I told my sponsor, you don't understand. I can't. I won't. There's no way you can't make me. And I am so grateful for good sponsorship because that woman helped me get through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous with an attitude like that. And it says the 12th step is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So I didn't have to have the spiritual awakening the day I got there. So she just kept me moving forward. When I got to the second step, I had to admit that there was anything more powerful than me. And I knew alcohol was more powerful than me. And I also knew that all of you guys sitting around the rooms that were having great lives were doing something that I couldn't do. So that's how she got me through the second step. When I got to the third step, there's the prayer. I memorized it, did just like in the book, like she told me. I wrote it on a piece of paper and carried it in my pocket, and I would read it at work. Like if it's the same pocket that I took liquor money on if somebody ordered a drink on the airplane, and I'd go in to get them some change, and my little third step prayer would fall out in the aisle. And somebody would go, what's that? And I go, that's my third step prayer for AA. Here's your drink. And I learned it. And I got back to my home group, and I remember exactly where I was sitting with my sponsor. And she said, get down on your knees and say this prayer. And I'm still not right, right? I said, I just had my hip replaced. It was a year ago. But that was the excuse I was given for why I couldn't get on my knees. And she said, okay, just sit as low as you can and say this prayer. And I said, I can't say it the words in the book. I can't say God. And she said, say whatever you have to say. Just do it. So I get there and I say, dude, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. And it's now my favorite prayer. And I do say God now, but she just let me go. She said, for you, making a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him is making a decision to continue on with the rest of the steps. Thank God for her. I don't think I'd be here alive even if it weren't for her getting me through the steps the way she did. And I got started on the fourth step, and I did like a lot of us, and some of these we balk, right? So it's like, I really don't need to do this. I don't think I need to tell anybody any of this stuff. And I put it off as long as I possibly could. But I'd already been out of rehab a couple months, and this sponsor did steps quickly, like in back to basics too. So she was moving me forward. And I was coming in from a trip one night, landing at 7:30, and she said, "You're coming over and we're doing your fifth step." And I'm still making excuses. No, I'm going to be really tired. I usually go to bed at 10. And she said, "Come over. We're doing it." So I go by her house, changed clothes, sat on her bed, got our Diet Coke, sat with her dogs, and went through the fifth step. And that is probably the first real spiritual awakening for me. Because when I left her house and was driving home at 2:30, I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. Nothing had changed except that I am continuing on with this work. And that's where I believe that the idea of God for me finally entered into my thick skull. And I continued as quickly as I could. We did a 6 and 7 quick with the seventh step prayer, and then we got started on amends. And I wrote my every amends out just like she told me I had to do. And I went in and had her look at everything. She says, whatever you do, do not make any amends until I look at this first. So I wrote it and went in. She took a red pen and crossed out almost everything that I wrote. Wow, that's a little harsh. Don't you know how smart I am? Still having those issues. And she said, you just said you're sorry. You've been saying you're sorry for 33 years. Your family thinks you're a sorry piece of shit. Sorry. And she said, you need to write it the way I told you. And so I went back through all 42 of the amends and changed it to I was wrong for. And started with my folks. And my parents were great people. They didn't beat me. It was a great upbringing. They taught me how to be a responsible, independent person. But they never once said the words, I love you. I never heard that growing up. And once I started in the program, and once I got to the amends section, and once I started, hugging, my family is not huggers, and now I'm hugging everybody, something changed in them too. They say it's a family disease and that everybody around us is affected, but I've also seen that the recovery can affect people in a positive way. It did with my family. Um, the hardest amends I made was it took me a year and a half to finally make to one guy, but I made amends to my company, everybody, everything that I could possibly think of that I didn't think I would be able to do. I did. I did exactly like my sponsor said, and I went to these people and said what she told me to say, and it's worked. And then 10, 11, and 12, I didn't do formally till I was a few years sober, but my sponsor basically had me start sponsoring people right when I was finished with 9 or in the middle of it. And she told me, she goes, you're sponsoring that girl at a meeting. And I said, I'm not her sponsor. And she goes, yes, you are. I said, everything that you're doing is everything I'm telling you to do. You're telling her to do everything I told you to do. You're her sponsor. And I said, this girl was so angry that nobody would sit next to her. But I did everything my sponsor told me to do. And when she said, you go sit next to her, I did it. When she said, you go ask her this, I did. Or you go tell her this, I did it. Because, so far everything this woman has told me has been right and good. So I'm going to go with everything. Nobody in AA has ever lied to me. I did everything that I was asked to do. I was told to say yes all the time, whether I felt like it or not. And got into service quickly. I had some problems with a lot of service work. I'd ask my sponsor, why am I going to the grocery store buying food, cooking the food, taking it to the AA dinner, paying for a ticket to eat it, and then cleaning up? And she goes, that's just a form of service. That's what we do now. And I was like, okay, if that's what I'm supposed to do, that's what I'll do. And I'll tell you what, that's been the most fun part of my whole recovery is service. I think for me, I'm so glad, like I said, that I had my sponsor that got me into sponsoring and other forms of service work as early as she did. Because I don't know if I'd still be here if I just got sober and kind of sat on a back burner. That wasn't my story. I got involved in rehab centers really early. I never worked in one, but I volunteered and I've taken back to basics into a couple rehabs in Houston when I was still living there, and also sponsor a lot of these women. And many of them, most of them don't turn into long-term sponsees. But you know what? My sponsor says that apparently that's what I'm supposed to be doing because I keep ending up in these kind of facilities where I just get a bunch of new people. And I will take anybody through the steps who wants to go. My sponsor did it for me, and so that's what I'm going to do for them. At 10 months sober, though, I had a horrible experience when my sponsor said, I am firing you. I said, that's really interesting because you didn't hire me or I didn't hire you. I don't understand how that happens. And I don't really know the whole story behind the whole thing, and I just, it's not my business, but I love her and I will be forever grateful to her for what she did getting me through the steps. And I think that she just needed to move on to something else. And so she didn't want me dragging down with her. So I just went back up to the club. I found another woman, said, you're going to be my sponsor. Because I was still thinking that work was watching me and I had to do everything right by them, not knowing that this is the kind of life I'm starting to learn to live. I've got somebody that I run everything by. I don't make all these decisions on my own anymore. I don't ever have any original thought. I mean, everything that I say is either my sponsor said it, somebody else's sponsor, or somebody in a meeting, or it's out of the book. And it's so much easier to live like that without having to try to figure things out all the time. This surely is the easier, softer way. When I stopped trying to run my own life is when my life got really, really good. And I keep doing it that way because it's too awesome. The hardest thing I've done in AA is to move. I was in Houston for 18 years, and that's my sober up family. I mean, I even have chips that say sobriety born in Texas. I mean, I didn't like Texas, but I like this family. I have never known anything like the unity, service, recovery out of this program, and the fellowship that is brought up in this deal is so flippin' awesome. And I was scared to leave these people. Um, but I also didn't make the decision and just leave randomly. I was going to Wyoming. That's where I was going because it snows there and they're good with old people and Social Security. So that's where I'm going. I took my sponsor up. We went and we looked at housing and AA in Casper, Cheyenne, and Laramie. It all looked good. I'm kind of ready. I'm doing the footwork, but I'm praying a prayer that I was taught early on. Show me the answer with such clarity, it will not escape me. And as much as I wanted out of Houston the day I retired, it took me 3 years till I finally moved. And what happened was I was out in Sedona, Arizona, visiting my rich brother, who I have never gotten along with, ever, even up to like 18 years of sobriety. And next thing I know, I'm buying a house right down the street from him. And due to this program and me finally looking at it deep enough, the problem I had with my brother was all, how it says in the big book, fancied or real. It was fancied. I made it up. There was nothing. Everything that I thought was a problem with him was in my mind. So I got that remedied, made some more amends to him and myself. We become fast friends. I live right down the street from him. He's welcomed me back into his family because I had alienated myself from all my family for years. I didn't want them to see what I was living like. And now he invites me to family vacations. I go over to dinner there once or twice a month. It's an amazing thing that I have through this program. It's all due to Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, everything that I need to know, I learned in AA. It's like we were absent that day in school. They taught us how to live. And after going to AA and listening to what this book says and these people say, and what the benefits we get from living this kind of a life, is just absolutely unbelievably amazing. And that God that I wasn't going to have anything to do with, um, that's a daily, all day, everyday thing with me. I rely on God completely and utterly, and then also run everything by a sponsor. And that is not the Julie that came into this program 25 years ago. I also retired from that job about 7 years ago now, I think. And that should never have happened either. So it's just, I don't know. If you're new, you two 4-day people, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. And just stay wherever you go with this program. Just stay, do it. That I'll tell you the same thing they told me. Give it 90 days. If you're not happier in 90 days, we'll refund your misery. And don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens, because there are miracles in this program. I've had many, and I know I'm not done. As long as I don't pick up a drink today, I've got a chance to do it again tomorrow. And my sponsor always tells me, if you take care of AA, BB and CC will fall into place and take care of themselves. And I find that to be so true. If I could get out of the way long enough and stop trying to run the show myself and let God do it, I'll be fine. And as it works, where I move out here in Cottonwood, Arizona, a half mile from my house is the only rehab facility within 5 cities here. We're called the Verde Valley, and there's a 12-bed unit for women and a 12-bed unit for men. So I take back to basics into them as well and sponsor a bunch of those girls. And I've been doing that the 6 years I've lived out here. I am so grateful for the opportunities that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. Um, it's taught me how to live. And I am so happy that I got here to you guys and then I didn't die out there drinking. And I know if I pick up another drink, I can end right up there. I don't want to. I like this life. I love AA. I love all y'all in AA, whether I know you or not. And just thank you so much for letting me share.